Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. Yes, you must be tired of seeing me. This is 6 times today, but I'm feeling good. I'm motivated. I got my coffee, my vitamins, so I'm motivated. Guys, this is going to be a great episode. This young lady, which I've actually known about since 2012, since she was with GNC and she was crushing it there. She went other places and crushed it just as hard. We're going to be talking about small businesses and how she's going to help. She helps companies go to how to compete with Wall Street, how to make the Main Street compete with Wall Street. So we're going to be talking about small business credit, and she's also going to drop some knowledge bombs about being a woman CEO and how to crush it. So Melissa, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm good. I took my vitamins this morning too, so crushing it
I
over here.
love it. Yep, I take my vitamins. I got my pre-workout. I'm good. So first question I want to ask is, what is your definition of resiliency?
So resiliency to me is just that ability to put one foot in front of the other, even when you don't want to. And despite what other people may say to you or what you may say to yourself, being able to trust your gut instinct to know which direction is the right one, even when your steps feel invisible. And I think really learning to be comfortable in discomfort, because every successful person has had to be uncomfortable to be able to live comfortably. And resiliency also really forces you to have to get acquainted with the silence inside yourself, to understand that you and everyone around you do in fact have a purpose, even when it doesn't seem like it. And I think once you realize where that purpose actually lies, it really is an aha moment, because I feel that everything I've been through over the last 20 years or so has really brought me to the place where I am now. And there's this quote by Thomas Edison that I heard recently where he said, I haven't failed. I've just found 10,000 ways it won't work. And resiliency is a lot like that, I think, especially in business. It's a mindset.
All right. So then, if somebody would see you now, they would see how successful you are. They see everything that you're doing, but your life wasn't always unicorns and rainbows. And you had some struggles in life. So tell us a little bit about where you come from, where did you grow up, and how did you become the force that you are today?
So I'm originally from Columbus, Ohio. And I grew up in a supportive Christian home, and my grandparents had an 80-acre farm. So I have a great appreciation for natures and animals, especially. I'm that person that makes best friends with the animals at the house and the party before the people. But I kind of joke around that I think I was always destined for business, because my first business venture was forcing my parents to buy McDonald's toys out of my childhood toys shop in the dining room. I think at one point I also tried to create a haunted house in our attic and charge them for admission, because I thought it was a scary place. They should be scared too. And I think for sometimes I would also put strings on my stuffed animals to try to make them into like marionette puppets, kind of like The Sound of Music, and charge them for admission for this live show I was doing in my brother's room. So it was a great childhood. I left for college when I was 17. I met my husband about the time that I was graduating. So he was just getting out of the Marine Corps at that time. And we got married in 2006. And from there, I started my career in business operations management, which I did going on about 18 years. And about 6 to 7 years ago, we were looking at our finances. And, like most people, realize that you have a limited time to prepare for retirement. So we needed to make some kind of pivot. And we had an opportunity to go into business with a friend of my husband's, and we created and started an esports company. So if you're not familiar with esports, it's essentially video games for sport with live stream tournaments and birthday parties and food and bar. And if you've ever been in the restaurant business, you probably already know that most successful restaurant owners have more than one location. And that's because restaurants tend to have lower profit margin. Mm-hmm. So it's the same for a gaming lounge too. Yeah, you make money, but the overhead expenses are very high. And we had potential investors lined up for new locations. We had partnerships with the gaming industry, and we were looking at expanding our current location, as well as a second and a third location around the state. And that's about the time that I started getting really sick. I have some autoimmune issues that I deal with, and I was still working full time in the health and wellness industry, at GNC, just like you. And the business was still new enough that I couldn't leave my full time gig at that point, and we had to choose. We had to give one up, and I needed to be able to keep my health insurance. And so, around that same time, we were up against a potential lawsuit, which was based on some false accusations. I won't get in detail about that because I don't, the business still exists. So I don't want to say anything that could deter business from them. But it was an incredibly stressful situation because my husband and I's names were on the lease and on all of the business credit cards, which we used for the initial investment for the equipment, which means we could have been forced out of the business and held liable for $750,000 if this lawsuit had come to fruition. And we could have lost our home, our vehicles, our savings, our retirement funds, and every penny that we made into the future until it was paid, because all the personal guarantees on the business. And so most people don't realize that if your name is on the business more than twice, so the first one is considered incidental, and that is considered commingled in the eyes of the law. So even if your paperwork is straight on your books for the IRS, you could still be considered commingled. And secondly, if your name is on the business credit cards, most people don't realize that those are still personally guaranteed, which is what happened to us. We didn't realize that those business credit cards removed the LLC protection that we had, which gave this lawyer basically the ability to go after us personally. And so during this time, COVID lockdowns were going down, which meant, courts were closed, the business was shut down, investors were losing their assets. And my husband and I were going back and forth about, what should we do? And ultimately decided it was best to just settle and walk while there was still money in the bank. So we sold our shares in July of 2020. So all of this went down over about a 10-month time period. And keeping in mind, I'm still sick. And that's 10 months of stress and anxiety and living on 3 to 4 hours of sleep because I was staying up late trying to save our home, and depression. And I felt like I was just watching everything that we'd worked so hard for just go down the toilet. So on top of that, I started losing my vision in my left eye. I had fluid building up behind my left eye because of stress. And I couldn't get into the eye doctor for a time because of COVID. And I nearly lost my vision. And by the time I actually made it in, my optometrist was urging me, hurry up and sell the business, because he was concerned that the damage could be permanent. And so I had 3 eye procedures and surgeries on my eyes to keep from permanently losing my vision. So you don't really realize how much you use and need both of your eyes until you lose the function of one, because you can't focus well. And the working eye is strained, which means you have more headaches. Driving, especially at night, is really hard because you can't see people coming back and forth. And so I have a bit of a soft spot for veterans who are out there who've lost their vision or an eye in their service, because I didn't realize how hard that was. And their loss is permanent. So they deserve a lot of appreciation for that. Stress, anxiety, depression, lack of sleep, being ill and almost blind, I went down really quickly. And I'm a very active person. And I couldn't think of any career that I was actually qualified for that didn't require my eyes, which created even more stress because I was the only one working at the time. So I think I'd never really lost my faith before this incident, but I did for a time because I felt very alone and very isolated. And I would say I was probably suicidal for about a year, worked through depression for about a year afterwards. And I really felt like I'd lost my purpose. I had no plan. And like anyone, like yourself who's been in the military before can relate, when you hang up your uniform and you don't have a mission, or the military seemingly doesn't care about you anymore as soon as you walk away. It feels very similar to that feeling where you gave your all to something and it's gone. And it feels kind of foreign to me now to say out loud that I was suicidal for a time, because I think before this, I really didn't have any understanding of that. And I wouldn't say that I was insensitive, but I couldn't really wrap my brain around being depressed that anyone would want to die just because they're sad. I thought it was selfish. And, until I was actually there and in it myself. So I have a newfound appreciation for resilient people who have gone through that and come out on the other side, because it's really, at least for me, it was this bizarre kind of out of body feeling and thought process. And I'm not a doctor, but I think that lack of sleep on top of everything else really changed my brain chemistry, because it wasn't that I was so depressed that I wanted to die. To me, it was more like this fight or flight type feeling of, I can't do this anymore. I just want to escape my body for a little while and I'll be right back. Like I was just going to go take a nap, and I think I had enough wherewithal to know that if I actually went through with that, it really would be the end. Like, you're not walking back into your body, Melissa. That's it. And so I didn't really want to do life anymore because it didn't feel good, but I couldn't see that changing soon. But I knew that wasn't actually, suicide wasn't a viable option, because I didn't want to hurt my family. And, if that wasn't an option, and I was 38 when this happened, what am I going to do? Because I still have 40 to 50 years left to go. And I just didn't want to do it anymore. I felt totally lost, and getting through each day just felt like such a chore. And, I tell people now that was the saddest, but also the happiest year of my life, because I had reached out to one of my cousins, and looking back, I really have no idea what possessed me to do this. I think in the back of my mind, I was just thinking that, she had gone through some life situations and had gone through some struggles with her faith. And I felt that I could tell her what was going on with me without any kind of judgment. And at the time, I just felt desperate. Like, I'm just losing my mind. I need help. And she turned me on to this book by Julia Cameron called The Artist's Way. I don't know if you've ever heard it before.
Yep.
She suggested that we go through this together, and I can't thank her enough for that, because I think if she had given me like a religious book or self-help book, I probably would have just let it sit in the dust. But it really helped me understand and find myself and get back to my roots again. And it brought back the creative side of me, which I'd kind of put on the back burner for years. So I started writing again. I started painting again. I made it a point to go hiking with friends regularly to kind of reground myself and get back out again. And I think I realized that I was checking off all the boxes that society expected of me, like it was some kind of grocery list, but realized that I didn't really want all of that. And it was okay to not to, and it was okay to deviate from everyone's expectations and do what I knew in my heart was right for myself. And there's this quote by Robert Louis Stevenson, which goes, "To know what you prefer instead of humbly saying amen to what the world tells you you ought to prefer is to have kept your soul alive." So I can relate really hard to that. And I had also put off travel for years, mostly due to cost, but we started to find ways to travel for less. I started reaching out to people who I loved and cared about, but didn't see very often, and made it a point to spend time with them. I reached out to old friends that life had kind of taken us in different directions, and made it a point to spend time with them. So if any of my friends are watching or listening, they know who they are. They really saved my life. So I appreciate them so much. But, through those conversations and allowing myself to be vulnerable with what I was going through, which is really hard for me, I realized I wasn't the only one going through it, and everyone that I was talking to suddenly became honest. And I think that people, and entrepreneurs especially, tend to bury how they feel, because we're expected to portray happiness and success for the world. And we want recognition and admiration for things that most people are afraid to do. And, we all go through droughts, And droughts are terrible. Droughts hurt, but they are also what help us grow and give us compassion. So that brings me to where I am now.
Well, before we even get any further, I just want to thank our sponsors because I want to dig a little bit deeper, especially me losing 80% of my vision. I want to talk about that in a minute. But guys, if you ever watch the show Forged in Fire, it's on the History Channel. Our friend Mike Peterson down below actually made this. It's a hand forged knife, and it's actually made from Damascus steel. It's the best steel you could get in the world. Christmas is here. Valentine's Day's coming. If your husband or brother likes to have knives, check out Mike's down below. They're all hand forged. I'm actually getting my best friend is actually Mike is actually making my best friend. He loves to fish, so he's actually making a fishing knife for my best friend with his name on it and hand forged in Damascus steel. So if you love knives, if you like the show, check out Mike down below. So, Melissa, let me ask you a question because at one point, I'm with GNC. I'm working out every day. We're doing over we're $1.4 million a year. We're one of the top stores in the country. The next day, I'm 80% blind. I can't even find my way around my house. I can't drive because my wife had to drive me everywhere. So I went from being on top of the world one day to literally having my wife watch my blind side the next day. And it really humbled me. And I believe that God said, all right, Rich, I'm God. You're not him. So I'm going to humble you. And I became very humble and very caring and teachable at that moment. So what was that like being on top of the world one day and then losing a lot of your vision the next day?
Just kind of like what you explained yourself, it's that just feeling of loss and just not having a plan and not knowing where to go or what to do or how long is this going to last? Is this forever? Is this just temporary? And that I think helped contribute to my depression too, because, everything that I do requires my eyes and my hands. And that was one of the scariest things that I was always afraid I could lose my vision or loss of my hands. And now I'm not even 40 years old and I've lost my vision. That's why I wear glasses now. I never wore glasses before 2020. But, through that, I don't think that I would be doing what I'm doing now if that hadn't happened.
Well, and, now you said it happened 2020.
Mm-hmm.
So, that is right when COVID happened. And for me, my mentor, Mr. Ed Milet, which is one of my favorite people in the world, he told me, he said, Rich, nothing has ever happened to you. Everything has happened for you.
Yeah.
And everything is a teachable lesson. He said, so, now your mess has become your message. So now when I talk to people and they say, I've gone through this and I've gone through that, I spin it that, it happened for you. So you can help somebody else that's struggling with the same thing you were going through. But sometimes it's hard to see the forest through the trees when you're going
Right.
through it. But now do you see that because you went through that, you went through some of the hardest stuff somebody can go through, it's become your superpower because you realize, well, there's nothing that I can't do now. If I can get through blindness, I can pretty much get through anything. So has that helped you and propelled you forward?
It's really the reason why I do what I do now, because even though that was kind of 2 years of hell, it put me in a position now to where I can actually help people prevent what happened to me. And not like with the vision portion, but, just business, without having to potentially lose all of their assets. And so it gives me passion because it gives me a why to wake up in the morning and be able to empathize with other small business owners that if somebody hadn't gone through that situation may not have the same understanding.
Okay, so now let's get into the nitty gritty. Your husband, Marine. I love my Marines. I think they got the best uniforms ever. I think that they have the best mindset that once a Marine, always a Marine. You never
Yeah,
call
I'm not
somebody an
allowed to say he's not a Marine anymore.
yeah, you never allowed to say he's an ex-Marine. He's always a Marine. But a lot of us, when we get out of the military, we want to start a company.
Mhm.
Whether it's t-shirts, hat, coffee, liquor, but we don't know what's personal credit, what's business credit, what's the difference. So, can you break it down Barney style between personal credit and business credit, and what the differences are?
Yeah, so you had mentioned about, going through hard things to get where you are now. So I had this awesome opportunity kind of land in my lap, and it was one of those experiences that all the struggles of your life kind of culminate and land in this one place, like a God calling. And so I had the opportunity to buy a practice in Oklahoma City under the J Galt umbrella. So if you're not familiar with J Galt, the name of the company came from this book called Atlas Shrugged, and it was by
Mhm.
Aaron Rind in the 1950s. And it's basically about this group of entrepreneurs who are smart, driven people who just want to be left alone and be able to live their life off the sweat of their own brow in a country with gross government overreach, if that sounds familiar to you.
Never,
And
never heard it. I've never heard anything like that before.
yeah, there's this character kind of working in the shadows. His name's John Galt, and he's approaching business owners to join the financial revolution to help them be successful despite the red tape. And so this character, that's where we got the name for our company. So Jay Galt from the character John Galt from the book Atlas Shrugged. And so what we're doing now is we're small business advocates that are striving to disrupt the financial industry in favor of the little guy on Main Street, like you kind of said at the beginning. So we're teaching business owners how to stop self-funding their business, how to leverage their business using corporate credit on the EIN versus their social security number, because that allows a business owner to operate, grow, and scale free of personal guarantees. So I spend my day teaching business owners how to not do what I did. So to answer your question, there's 3 types of credit. So there's personal credit, business credit, and corporate credit. So personal is something everyone's familiar with. Corporate credit is where Wall Street lives. So this is where large corporations have access to credit without personal guarantees. Business credit is kind of like a hybrid between the two. So it's personal with a B. So it's where an owner is giving larger credit limits to run the business, but they're still personally guaranteed. And so you're given access to this capital, but you're punished for using it because it may still report on your personal credit score. But it may also report on your business credit score as well. So your business is essentially an authorized user on your personal credit when you use business credit versus corporate credit. So, a couple interesting statistics that you might want to know. So this is based off of some studies by the FDA, or not the FDA, I'm sorry, SBA. 50% of businesses make it past the first 5 years or don't make it past the first 5 years.
Mhm.
So you're probably already familiar with that. 29% of which close because of financial challenges. So there was another study that US Bank did, I think earlier this year, saying that 82% of the time is due to cash flow problems. So that's really the problem that we're working to solve. I left a successful career as a business operations manager to become a small business advocate. And I do it because I don't want anyone to go through the same disaster I walk through when it's something that I can prevent. And so the big question is how? How do you get corporate credit? Because if you've ever been a business owner, you already know that you're going to be asked to permanently or to personally guarantee pretty much everything.
Mhm.
And if you walk into a bank and you talk to a small business banker and you ask for a commercial loan on the EIN, most of the time they're going to look at you like you're crazy and have horns. And so normally they're going to ask you for a credit score of 640 or higher, 2-3 years of business financial statements, 2-3 years personal financial statements, 2-3 years personal and business tax returns, business debt schedule, business and personal assets list. And we joke around and say a DNA sample. why should a bank ask a business owner to do this? Because doesn't that defeat the purpose of having an LLC? That doesn't really make the bank the bad guys, though. They're dealing with regulated money that's government insured. And so they have to be a little bit more careful. And they don't always know that this is actually an option. You'd be surprised how many people aren't aware of this. Now, how do you change that, though? How do you get corporate credit? How do you get a loan? How do you get commercial real estate on or a lease on the EIN? Because there are 4 types or 4 tiers of business credit. And the score runs a little differently than personal. So business credit runs on a scale of 0 to 100. If your business wants to operate entirely on the EIN, so that they have true separation and to be able to protect their assets and have money and credit available to grow and leverage their business or their accounts receivable, you have to be at tier 4 with a score of 80 plus, and that is where Wall Street lives. So how would a small business owner achieve this when the list of fundability factors that's used by a lender isn't available? And you had to physically register at the business credit bureaus. So there are 3 of them. One you probably already know, which is Dun & Bradstreet. Experian Business, which is quickly becoming the largest, and Equifax Business. The other problem is that less than 7% of business credit lenders actually report to the business credit bureaus because it costs them money. And they don't tell you who reports and who doesn't. And they don't post anywhere what the underwriting criteria is for any of this counts. So where do you even start, assuming that the bureaus even know that you exist? So that's kind of where we come in. We teach Main Street business owners how to play in Wall Street sandbox. That's what we say. And we want to work with business owners to do 3 major things. So the first one is we want to be able to establish and build their corporate credit profiles, secure their credit accounts, and create a positive credit history through the 3 major credit bureaus. So that's the first thing. The second thing is we want to be able to provide business owners with a wide range of funding options through business credit lines, loans, and other funding sources specifically tailored to their business needs. And third, we're going to equip business owners with the tools and resources that they need to manage their finances effectively. So credit monitoring services and financial analysis tools, things like that. And so if you are a small business owner, wouldn't it be great if you could access capital and credit at the best rates and terms, just like a large corporation?
Definitely.
So listening, that anyone who's ever personally guaranteed a loan or used their name on business credit, leases, or rent, or been denied a loan because of their personal credit, those are the people that I really want to help, because I can work with anyone with an EIN, but that group in particular I know need me the most, because if a business closes down, on average, after the dust has settled, an owner on average is responsible for approximately $80,000 or more. So, I want to be a part of the solution, because entrepreneurs are a rare breed of people. Just like, veterans, you dare to do what people are afraid of doing. And being an entrepreneur is really hard. And I think it's more because people are afraid of, it's not that things are difficult that they don't dare, it's because they don't dare that they might be difficult. And so any business owners out there who are listening or watching, I would challenge you to just pause and think about, where would you want your business to grow? Or how could your business change for the better if you had access to cash and capital where you needed it at the best rates and terms, without having to risk your personal assets that you work so hard for? So would you be more willing to take more risks? Could you hire more people? How much could your business grow if you had someone there that could help guide and help you and strategize your business? And if you could add transferable value to your business so that it's more valuable and easier to sell when you decide and exit and retire. So with us, yes, there's a cost. It's an investment in the company, but what's the cost of inaction? What are you risking by doing nothing? So did you open your business for a few years, or did you open it for a lifetime to create generational wealth for your family? So that's what we're here for. Any Any other questions on the credit?
Yeah, I mean, because I'm thinking, I see. I'm part of one group, and there's 16,500 veteran businesses that are involved, and people think, you know what? I want to start a T-shirt company or a hat company. I'm just going to start an LLC, and then I'm good. And
Mhm.
I have my personal my coach, my business coach, and he's like, that's the wrong fucking answer. He's like, he's like, first thing before you even start, he told me this because I made the same mistake. He's like, I want you to, set up a corporation before you don't even do an LLC. And he said, there's a reason why it's called limited, because you're very limited about your liability. And he says, make sure that you start your S corp, and that's what I have. But he's that's something he said. You want to build up your corporate credit, and
Mhm.
instead of just using your personal credit. This way, like you said, if you ever business goes out of business, you're not out 80K.
Mhm.
If
Or
it's a
how
company, if it's a corporate and the corporation goes out, too bad, so sad, bye bye. But if it's on me, then I'm screwed for a company that I never even planned on keeping for a long time. And like you said, if
yeah.
the average is $80,000, they
Mhm.
weren't making $80,000 a year. So that's going
That's
to
what
take
they're
forever
left.
to pay off, right?
Yeah. Yeah, especially if you don't have another business to fall on for additional income to supplement to pay for that. That's why a lot of small businesses owners end up having to file bankruptcy. And so, that happens a lot. There's a lot of people who might be passionate about one thing or another and want to create this great business or a restaurant or something like that, but may not, know everything about business to be able to run the business side, but they're great at making pancakes. Um, and so that's where we come in. We want to be able to help them strategize their business and look at their cash flow to make sure that we can strategize their business, help them grow without imploding because they don't have the cash flow there to be able to grow and scale, and without tying up their personal assets.
Okay, so like this is a teaching podcast. So if if Joe Snuffy decides to get out of the military on December 21st, 2023, wants to start a company to go into the new year with vertical momentum, um, would be your top three pieces of advice for somebody that's just starting a small business?
I would definitely find a bookkeeper and accountant and someone who's like a business consultant that can help make sure that you're set up correctly. Um, and that can also give you advice on strategizing the business. There's several things that need to be done in order for me to come in and help with the funding. If we can get to it fast enough, that would really be ideal because it takes us 10 to 12 months to really build corporate credit. At least if you go through us, on average for a business owner, it may take about 10 years to do it on their own. But there's some items that are kind of foundational items that have to be checked off before you can even get lending on your EIN that people aren't always aware of, and that costs the business owner money. So one of those is making sure that you have a website, making sure that you have an email address that's with the company domain, that your phone number is registered to 411, which a lot of people don't realize that you need to do that, but it is one of the foundational pieces. And making sure that you have a physical address, or at least where you're not using a PO box. And if you don't want to use your personal home address, you can get a virtual office so that you have an address that you can use on your paperwork. So those are kind of foundational pieces, but I would definitely look at getting a business consultant if you've never done business before, and someone that can help you with your bookkeeping.
Okay, so then how do we find you? How do we support you? And if we need some of these things, how do we get in touch with you guys?
So for myself, I have my QR code on my screen. So if you're watching, you can scan that, but it goes directly to my website. My calendar is on my website. If you want to just talk for a little while, you can book time there. There's also on our website, we also have a free ebook for anyone just looking for additional information. And if you're listening, my website is www.jgalt.io/mgreen. You can also find me on LinkedIn under Melissa Green. Also, if you go on my LinkedIn page, you'll also see my University for Oklahoma link. So if I have any ladies listening, I also hold an advisory seat for the Women in Leadership program through the University of Oklahoma. So my area of expertise there falls within driving ideas, intellectual growth, and transformation. So we still have open enrollment in 2024. So if you're interested in that, this is a program for university students and female leaders in the workforce. It's part of continuing ed through the university. So we give women skills and tools for leadership so they can improve their bottom line and win at work-life balance, some effective negotiation and strategy, how to grow high-value employees, and problem-solving skills. And so if you're interested in that, you can click on my link and sign up for that. You will get a discount if you use my name as well.
I love it. So, and I'm so grateful that we finally got a chance to hang out. So guys, make sure you check her out. Her LinkedIn profile is amazing. I was all over that today. So make sure you check her out on LinkedIn, on Facebook. She's everywhere. I mean, you just got to put her name in and she's going to come up everywhere. And guys, I'm sure that even though she's no longer with GNC or with Vitamin Shop, that if you ever had a question about getting healthy, especially with your eyes, I'm sure she'd have some answers for you. So I just wanted to
talk about that for hours.
Yeah. So guys, I'm so grateful for you guys for always showing up. As you know, I'm a big Ed Milet guy, and just this morning I got notification that we made it on some of the same entrepreneur lists for our podcast. So I'm grateful just to be able to be on the same list as Mr. Ed Milet. And guys, if you ever wanted to start your own profitable podcast, I actually just launched a course. So if you guys want to learn how to start a profitable podcast with over 1 million downloads, let me know, and I'll actually teach and mentor you for 8 weeks. So if you guys are interested, just let me know. So Melissa, I just want to say thank you. And when you hang up, tell your husband thank you for his service. I appreciate that. No matter what branches we are in, we are always brothers, and we are always going to support one another. So I just want to say thank you and have a Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me and letting me crash your podcast.
Oh, it's been fun. So guys, remember, vertical momentum, the only way to go is but up. I won't see you next week. So have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. And remember, vertical momentum, the only way to go is but. I love you guys. Melissa, have an amazing week.
You too. Thank you.